Name is Dr. Dolores Tarver. I'm a licensed psychologist here in Georgia, and it is time for the TT Time with Dr. Tarver is a wellness-based podcast. It is not intended to be a substitute for a relationship with a licensed mental health provider. Woo! We made it to almost the end of April. Tomorrow is the last day. I'm always thinking of this song, and apparently no one in the younger generations knows it, but 30 days have September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31, except the second month alone, to which we 28 assign until leap year gives us 29. Did you all learn that? Okay, no, I'm telling my age. All right, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. It's okay. But anyway, I am excited about the fact that we have gotten through April. April has just been a lot going on. We had Easter late this month, Pope Francis transition. We've been dealing with a lot of stuff. There are so many changes and challenges going on. I realize I better get to the National Museum of Black History if I'm going to make it, because it sounds like exhibits are disappearing left and right. So, we are going to finish up this series. And this month, we have just been talking about work related stress. And I know there's always all these other types of stress too. But we have been focusing in this series on just being able to navigate all of the challenges that are going on, whether that's returning to the office, stress associated with potential layoffs, or trying to figure out a new job search plan or a financial plan for yourself, the impact of layoffs if you're still there in the environment, and budget cuts because that means less people doing more work, and how that impacts your health, being able to create a career wellness plan as you navigate what might be the new normal in some places, at least temporarily. Last week we got into self employment stress. I was a little long winded, so I'm going to give y'all some time back this week. And so I wanted to end this series with the stress associated with finding your passion and a purposeful career, because I think a lot of people in general struggle with that. The amount of people that tell me that they don't really know what they want to do often are in a job, something that maybe they've been in so long, they know how to do it really well. So it's easy for them. It could be that you have just been in a place so long that you've gotten comfortable, and maybe you've been able to move up, but it's not really something maybe that you're excited about, but it may be something that you're good at. And so a lot of people will tell me they'll fall back into things that they know they can excel at, because when you're looking for a job, you're going to go for the easy money, right? The low hanging fruit, as they say. And so when you're trying to switch career paths, this can definitely be a challenge, because you may have had all of this previous work in a different area. And so it is challenging for sometimes people to see you in a new light. So let's say you worked in accounting, finance for 10, 15 years. Now you have gotten an HR degree and you're trying to get in human relations and move your way up. And people see your resume for an HR position and they're like, no, but we've got a great accounting and finance position for you because we see you have 15 years of experience. So people will talk to me about how difficult it is to make that adjustment to a different area. Some of you may be in that place now. Maybe you've switched to real estate. Maybe you have switched over to a field in mental health. There's your plug already early for mental health providers. You may have switched over to even your own business, and you're trying to just kind of figure out, like, okay, what do I want to do with this? There are so many different directions I could go in. But I'm not really sure. I'm not, as we talked about last week, not necessarily getting that momentum. It's not continuing. Maybe I need to shift. Maybe it was doing really well, and now that need has lessened, and there's not as much of a void. And so I need to kind of figure out some new ways to be inventive. Or maybe I was working in this capacity. Maybe I was a part of a family owned business and I want to move in a different direction. So I want to kind of switch areas. And so people are struggling with trying to figure out, like, what's that next? What's that? How do you know what your passion is? How do you know what's a good fit for you? How do you know the career path that you could go down that could be effective for you, that you could be successful at. And I don't think that there is an easy answer to that. Here's your second plug for therapy, because I think sometimes we don't know ourselves and what our needs are, and because as our needs change and develop, you may have, for example, had younger children, and now you're at a place in your life where you don't, and so you have more flexibility, and again, maybe you've gotten additional training, certifications, skills, and so you're looking for that shift, but you haven't reassessed what your needs are in terms of being in a career path currently, what you can offer. A lot of us haven't updated our resumes. We haven't even thought about like, why am I seeking employment? What am I looking for? We haven't done that self reflection and that introspection, about the type of person we are and in the environment that would be the best fit for us. And so oftentimes, I say that all to say, like, sometimes we're just scattered. We're all over the place. We got all of these ideas. We are trying to look at 15 different things. Some of you are on the internet looking, you're on social media looking, trying to see what other people are doing, and you're thinking like, oh, hey, I could bring that here. But what ends up happening is we have all of these choices, all of these different directions that we could go in, and one that can be overwhelming. I think for a lot of people, they say, hey, I'm going to kind of sit down and take some time and figure out my plan, and then they come back and they're like, okay, this one plan turned into 15 plans, and I'm having a hard time narrowing it down, or there are so many options and I don't necessarily even know where to start. And a lot of people will say that. So say you haven't gone to school yet, say you're, and I often see this with people in their 30s and their 40s, who haven't quite found what their passion and their purpose is just yet. And so they don't know where to begin. And so that part of being overwhelmed is like, what do I even have an interest in? What even would be a good fit? And a lot of times it's easier for people to identify what they don't like and identify what they haven't been excited about. You may also be experiencing some depression, some anxiety, might be some transitional issues going on. You may be getting back in the workforce and trying to find a path because there's been a loss. And so you're having to make some adjustments and some transitions you may not feel like you're prepared to make at this time. So that might feel overwhelming. You might be navigating. We call them now the sandwich generation of you have your own kids and you're caring for your aging parents, plus your own needs. And that can be very draining and feel overwhelming to people. And they don't feel like they have time to really invest in trying to figure out what would be a good path for them, much less what would be feasible given the responsibilities they have. But they may be in a situation where, okay, I need to do something different than what I'm doing now. I know this career or this job doesn't have a path forward for me that's either healthy or going to allow me to be able to financially support myself in the ways that I need to. And I will say, akin to that, talked about that, being all over the place. And sometimes we just have a lack of direction. And so we just are all over the place in terms of the options. I've talked about last week having realistic goals. The same is true as when you're trying to figure out your meaning and your purpose and your career path, your vision, is that if you don't have kind of clear objectives and it's more aspirational, then it is very difficult for you to translate that over into an actual path. And so it'll just feel like there's endless opportunities, but you haven't actually made a step because you haven't really narrowed those down into tangible goals that have steps for you to execute. Sometimes you are going to need some additional training. Sometimes you are going to need that mental health counseling to get clear and figure out what it is that you want to do in this next phase of your life, particularly if you're transitioning for whatever reason, grief and loss, need a new career path, situation has changed. Maybe you focused on other people early on. Some people started families early. Some people were caregiving early. Some people were having to help support their parents and their families. And so they didn't get a chance to really decide what would be potential options for them or invest in themselves because they might have had to take care of younger siblings, or been responsible for parents who needed caregiving, or just needed to bring money into the house because the family didn't have enough resources. And so some kids had to drop out of school in order for them to be able to work so they could help provide for and support themselves and the family. So when you're in situations like that, it almost feels like you are kind of behind and you're underdeveloped. And so a lot of that comparison behavior starts kicking in, and that can be why the choices feel very overwhelming. Or it feels like there's too many different directions you can go into because you're dealing with self-worth, you're dealing with self-confidence. I could, if I'm getting back into the workforce, maybe I've been out of the workforce for a long period of time. Maybe I had some illness, maybe I was raising family, whatever the case may be. Maybe I didn't have to work. I was in a position where I was able to focus on other things. And now I have to get back out here, and I'm like, what kind of usable skills do I even have? So I'm looking at all these options, and there's so many of them, but what's right for me? I also think that a lot of times we're looking for flexibility in a career, and so that ends up being the thing that supersedes everything else. So it's like, oh, I just need something that I can do. I can work from home, which is why a lot of times people end up in jobs. They don't end up in career paths because they're trying to find something that allows them to work remotely, and that limits the options. Particularly now, as we've talked about, a lot of places are having people come back into the office, and so now, I've done jobs of convenience, but I haven't actually been able to do jobs that were meaningful and purposeful. I think the other challenge or challenges, I will say, there's a lot of fear and doubt, I think, in general, that we have about switching careers, moving in a different direction, getting out there, trying to find something that's meaningful and purposeful. What if I fail? What if I succeed and I got to keep it up? What if I get out here and I'm not a people person. I don't do well with these people. I've had conflict everywhere I've tried to work. So these kinds of challenges, I think, creep in. And then it may be that you feel like you're too old. Like a lot of times now, if you're moving, particularly in technology, there are certifications that you have to pass. If you're in a health field, there are, certifications, tests that you have to pass to get licenses. If you're in education, right? Like I understand that for a lot of y'all, that Gates is got you in a chokehold, and some of us just don't really test well, or some of us. It takes us a while. Like we'll get it, we might just take it multiple times, and maybe I'm like, well, that's a lot of money. I don't have time to be wasting money and resources right now. And it may be that there's an opportunity for me if I go ahead and get this certification or get this license or get this degree, whatever it may be. But I'm fearful that I won't be able to complete that task. Maybe I feel like there's so much going on in my life right now that I can't commit. Maybe I'm, not focused. I'm having difficulty with follow through. I'm having difficulty initiating things. I'm having difficulty with motivation. And so I think a lot of times those challenges also interfere with our ability to be able to see options because we're talking ourselves out of things before we even attempt them. And that negative self talk and that doubt is one of the main reasons why people struggle to be able to find what their passion is, because they limit themselves, if you will, kind of back themselves into a corner by thinking about all of the things that they're not going to be able to do. So, right, I'm shooting down all those ideas. We call those yes butters in my field. So it's like, yeah, I could, but, and so when you yes but everything away, you usually don't have a lot of options that are left. And then we also have people that are talking to you, and you're sharing these dreams, these thoughts, these passions with somebody, and somebody shoots it down for you, or somebody's like, I don't really think that's going to be a good fit for you, or you don't have the right personality for that, or you don't, insert whatever there, and so they're also speaking negativity over you. And I want to be clear: there is a difference between negativity and constructive feedback. Sometimes people are trying to help you shape your vision. Write the vision, make it plain. Sometimes we're broad and people are trying to narrow us down, and sometimes people will be able to recognize, like, hey, the other times you have tried this, these were your barriers. What have you done different to address these barriers? A lot of people will have problems and fail out of school, and then they go back to school. They haven't addressed any of the stuff that caused them to fail out the first time. So guess what's going to happen the second time? Like, you're likely going to have the same experience. In order for you not to repeat some of those same mistakes and to address some of the barriers and challenges, then again, that therapy, that career coaching, it might be you need some vocational training. It might be some mentorship. It might be that you need someone to kind of walk you through some of the other factors like your financing, whatever it may be. How am I going to pay for school? How am I going to pay for this certification? How am I going to pay for this licensure exam? And so a lot of those things can sometimes be perceived as criticism, particularly if you're in a negative space already. And so then you feel like, well, never mind. Anytime I want to do something, people just don't support me. And that's not necessarily what is happening when people ask you questions. They're helping you to be able to visualize what this plan is and what are the steps to be able to get there. And as we've talked about, like often that's what sets us up for failure is that we have not prepared to succeed. And so I do encourage you to be mindful about that. I do think it's also important for you to understand that your values and your needs and your objectives are a very important part of you finding a purposeful and sustainable career path. Oftentimes, people are just jumping into stuff, trying stuff on, like, hey, I'm gonna go to the store and try on these shoes, this dress, see how it fits. Jobs aren't necessarily conducive to you doing that, but there are ways for you to, because you would, and I say that because you don't want to be switching jobs every 3 months, 6 months. Some of y'all lasting 3 weeks, 6 weeks because you want to kind of try something out and then you get in and you don't like it. And then it just looks like you're not consistent and you don't have follow through and you have difficulty with management or coworkers, right? So you don't want, it's kind of like having a bunch of inquiries on your credit, brings your credit score down. So we want to make sure that you're being mindful and thoughtful about however you're pursuing and approaching jobs, because there's opportunities for you to learn about something without you going through the process of being hired, get the job, and then you quit. And again, and this is why it's important for this self introspection and this reflection in you to understand what your values and needs are, and your objectives. Because if, for example, you have physical limitations, probably would not be conducive for you to go into an environment where it's going to be a physically laborious job. I mean, I think oftentimes those are jobs that may be easier to come by, and so people will take it and they'll be like, oh, I'll just suffer through it. Then one, you can do yourself some significant damage, and two, that is not sustainable, right? And so being thoughtful about that, right? Some of you are dealing with difficulty with your vision. So you don't need to be in a capacity at a job where you need to have keen vision in order for you to do the job. You may be a person that doesn't do well driving, like you fall asleep very easily on the road, get lulled to sleep. You probably do not want to be a truck driver, right? And so thinking about, okay, what's important to me? Is it that I need an 8 to 5 or a 9 to 4, 9 to 6, or whatever? Do I need certain hours for a job? Do I need a job that allows me to have upward mobility? Here are my goals that I'm trying to reach. And so I want to look at jobs that are going to allow me to reach that goal. People are making lateral moves a lot of times, like it's not really helping. I'm just kind of transferring over to another place, but I'm not thinking strategically about what are my longer term goals and plans. So you always want to make sure that how you're moving is going to allow you to be able to get to your ultimate goal. So if your ultimate goal is to be able to get in management, then you may, and here's I think the challenge for some people too, is that you may be taking on projects. You're not going to get paid any extra money for taking on those projects. You may be getting some mentorship or coaching. You're not going to be getting paid for that. That might be extra time outside of your work that is going to allow you, might volunteer, that's going to allow you to be able to get experience in an area so that you can put that on your resume and so that you can show that you're growing, that you volunteer for things. When you do your evaluations at your job, that you set the goals that you want to have, how you want to move up, and rate yourself on how well you met those goals. Because I think a lot of times we start out with some goals, but then we fall off with them, and then we're not tracking them and we're not consistent, and we'll find next year, oh, I got the same goals, right? Because I haven't made any progress. So if you're having difficulty being able to figure out what that may look like, again, there's your plug for your career counseling, your plug for your mental health counseling to be able to fine tune that. You might also have a supervisor, a mentor who is willing to sit with you and help you fine tune those goals, what your values are, what's important to you. Is it important to you that it's a family friendly company because you have young children? Is it important to you that's a caregiver friendly company because you're caregiving for parents? Is it important to you to be able to go to your appointments? You might have physical therapy. You might have some conditions that require you to be seen weekly for something. And so you want to make sure that your company values those kind of things. Do you need insurance? Yes, you do. Do you need to have a retirement plan? That would be great. Do you need to have health insurance? I would recommend that, right? So looking at these kind of things and making sure you're setting yourself up to be successful. And I think that's part of the challenge with us sometimes and why it's hard for us, because once we find something we like and then it doesn't offer those benefits, then we're like, oh, never mind, I can't do this thing. That doesn't mean stop. It may mean you have to look at some different options and take some steps to be able to ultimately get there and have those benefits. And so I think that's the other challenge is people have a hard time setting those short-term goals in order to reach the longer-term goals, because sometimes we can just be very narrow-minded and we just kind of see the right now and we don't see the bigger picture. So I everything that we've talked about, I say over this series, definitely applies to this. Get your team together. Utilize all of your resources to be able to get information that will help you be able to fine tune your plan. You might want to take an assessment to be able to see what your interests are, to see what your personality dynamics are, and what kind of supervisor or what kind of environment is the best fit for you. Thinking about what your needs are in terms of what's outside of work, your best and most productive hours. If y'all are not morning people, please do not be getting a job that starts at 6:30 in the morning. You're gonna be late and you're gonna get fired. So wanting to make sure that you're looking at all of those factors so that you can make an informed decision, but also that you allow yourself to dream. Think about, you know, what you enjoyed when you were younger, when there weren't so many demands on you, when you didn't have to be so thoughtful about all of those other factors. Think about what you light up doing. Think about what doesn't feel like work to you. So sometimes you got to do a little bit more digging to be able to connect with that part of you, because maybe it was closed off for whatever reasons early on. Maybe I didn't have access, maybe I didn't have time, maybe I didn't have support. And so when dreams are deferred, sometimes we feel like that they're done and I don't have any options. But sometimes deferred just means delayed, and there's an opportunity for you to be able to move into it now. It might just look a little different than it might have looked when you were 18 or 20 years old, right? So I know that change is hard. Finding and connecting to our purpose and our meaning and our value can be challenging. It is not impossible. It is definitely doable. And as I've been saying, probably this whole month, we absolutely can do hard things. Okay. You all take good care of you. Be well. And I'll see you next month for our next series. Bye bye.